Good day, government officials and residents of Ayungon and Negros Oriental. In light of the annual event entitled Laban Pilipinong Pamayanan, we geologists from all around Negros Oriental hope to spread awareness about erosions, landslides, tsunamis, and tectonic movements circulating around Ayungon. In our organization, we aim towards geological awareness and safety against hazards and threats. Thus, we present you Project Ayungon, a vision and venture of its geological features and hazards through mapping.
Before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce Ayungon. Ayungon, officially known as the Municipality of Ayungon, is a second-class municipality in the province of Negros Oriental, Philippines. According to the 2020 census, it has a population of 47,102 people. Ayungon is located on the midriff of Oriental Negros' northern stretch, 82 kilometers away, and is approximately 2 hours from Dumaguete City. Now, let us explore Ayungon's beauty through this video.
Today, I will be using the program Google Earth Pro to explore the geological features in Ayungon. Firstly, what is Google Earth? In summary, Google Earth is a software wherein it primarily uses satellite imagery to create a 3D representation of the Earth's surface. They are allowing users to view our Earth's landscape, cities, and other locations from a vast array of angles in the safety of their own homes. Now, let's start by identifying the different water bodies around Ayungon. As we zoom in, we can see that Ayungon is not only beside Calagcalag Bay, right here, but also harbors a river, right here, which is called the Ayungon River. As we follow the river from where it meets the sea, right over here, we can see that it covers a long path, this one, within Ayungon, crossing many roads, like this one, over here, bridges, and homes, eventually ending at the end of the mountain. As we zoom in further, we can see that the river ends right here, going down into a dark pit, or just the shadows of trees. Now, returning back to the waypoint, for our geological structures, we can see that Ayungon is filled and surrounded by multiple farmlands and possesses a fair amount of mountainous regions, as we can see here by the pins I have made. Though as shown, these regions are on the outskirts and/or are fairly far away from the center of the municipality, which is here. But as we explore, we can observe that there is still a fair amount of people residing on the outskirts. Of course, beside their farmlands, like these homes right here, and some on the edges of the mountain, as it's shown in the pin right here. Now that concludes our tour around the geological features in the municipality of Ayungon.
Today, we will be utilizing the PHIVOLCS Fault Finder site to locate the faults nearing and circulating around Ayungon. This is the link. When you open the site, the interface will look like this. There are buttons. Navigate around the buttons and read its information. Press the third button, which is Other Fault System, then press Agree on this segment. As you can see, the site will automatically show you a map that contains the faults circulating the Philippines, which are these red lines. Press the button at the bottom right corner of the screen, this one called Legend, so that you can see the legend of the indications of these lines. An active fault would look like a solid line or a trace certain. A dashed line is a trace which is approximate. A dotted line is an approximate offshore projection. And then we also have black lines, which are potential active faults, solid line, and dashed line. Next, locate Ayungon in the map. Note that Ayungon is in Negros Island, and then zoom it. So here is Negros Island. We will zoom it. There. As you can see, we can see dashed lines all over Ayungon. Also, you can also press this base map to change the interface. Here, I will choose Google Maps Hybrid. So now, we can view this in Google Maps. So as you can see, there is an active fault, which is a dashed line, where the trace is approximate around Ayungon. It's right over here. We can follow this line. It passes a little bit to the UCCB Church from the elementary school, to the Ayungon by the docks, and then there's also one here going to the north. So these areas that are near the dashed line, they are more susceptible to damage during earthquakes. This is because faults and tectonic movements happen in these areas. So it is very crucial to note that these areas are more prone and hazard and are dangerous. So after which, you can exit. As you've mapped already the fault, you can already screenshot. And then after which, you can reset, and then you're done. Hopefully that this mapping method has been insightful to everyone. Once again, this is Fault Finder by phivolcs.dosd.gov.ph.
So in this part of the presentation, I will be explaining the hydrometeorological hazards of the municipality of Ayungon. But before we begin, if you do not know what hydrometeorological hazards are, these are hazards caused by extreme meteorological and climate events such as floods, droughts, hurricanes, tornadoes, or landslides. These hazards account for a dominant fraction of natural hazards and occur in all regions of the world. For that particular reason, we geologists would want to raise awareness of the dangers that are all around the citizens of Ayungon, as well as the residents outside of that town. So this map right here we are using shows the areas of Ayungon that are susceptible to hydrometeorological hazards, floods in particular. The map we are using here is from Hazard Hunter PH. So the specific purpose of this segment is to determine whether areas of the municipality have low, moderate, high or very high susceptibility to floods. So if we base it upon the legend located on the right, the color indigo signifies very high susceptibility of floods among that particular area. Color blue, on the other hand, signifies high susceptibility. The color purple signifies moderate susceptibility, while the color lavender signifies low susceptibility of floods. So going back to the map, if we look closely, 4 consecutive barangays of Ayungon have high susceptibility of floods, namely Barangay Awaan, which is estimated to be located over here, Barangay Tampocon 1, and then Barangay Tampocon 2, and then Barangay Kalag-Kalag, located over here. So now that you're aware of the hazards present in the municipality of Ayungon, it is important for you to know that areas with high flood susceptibility rates may cause high-intensity flood events. This simply means that when flood arises in these areas, it will incur large social and economic consequences for communities and individuals. That concludes my hydrometeorological assessment in the municipality of Ayungon.
So let's move on to the active fault maps for Ayungon. All you have to do is visit the PHIVOX website. And then after that, we will click the hazard maps. And then after that, we will see this color red link. And then we'll just click this. And yeah. So everyone, as you can see, we need to include some information on the location we chose. Therefore, this is Central Visayas, Negros Oriental, and then Ayungon. We just need to click the submit button, and after that, we just scroll it down and you will see the different files for different hazard maps. So we just need the ground rupture active fault map. So we'll just download this. Then after downloading it, guys, we will see the this map. Can see this map. Oh, sorry. And then, guys, as you can see, there is a legend here, and I will shortly explain it to you guys. So there is a legend for active faults and potentially active faults, and they are very similar, or they're really the same, but for active faults, it's only red, and for the potential active faults, it's black. So first line is solid line. The trace here is certain. And next is dashed line. The trace is approximate. Hatchers on solid line indicate downthrown area. Here, the trace is certain, and then arrows on dashed line indicate side of flexure, scarp, or warp. Here, the trace is approximate. And next is saw teeth on solid line indicate upthrown area. The trace here is certain, and then lastly, the saw teeth on dashed line indicate upthrown area, which represents here that the trace is approximate. It's still the same with the potentially active faults, however, it's just colored black. So if you as you can see, guys, on the map, there are two lines. You can see two lines here, two red lines, and one is the solid line, and next is the saw teeth, represented by a dashed line with an upthrown region. If we refer it if we refer back to the legend, it is the second to the last line for active faults, and the solid line is the first line. So This active fault is known as the East Negros Fault System, commonly known as Bindoy-Gihulngan Fault, and it is one of the active faults in this region. There are many threats if there's an active fault in our location. Active faults are probably going to start producing earthquakes at some point in the future. Landslide, violent ground motion, rockfalls, liquefaction, and even tsunamis all result from movements on an active fault. And they can all inflict significant property damage, human casualties, and loss of livelihood for people who live nearby. Earth rupture caused by fault movement may cause damage to buildings and other man made structures that are located directly above inland active faults in the Ayungon municipality. That is all for the active fault maps.
Okay, guys, so we are going to be taking a look at the ground shaking hazard map for Ayungon, Negros Oriental. So, what exactly is ground shaking? The second primary earthquake hazard, ground shaking, is the result of rapid ground acceleration. If an earthquake generates enough shaking intensity, ground shaking may cause landslides, mudslides, and avalanches on steeper hills or mountains, all of which can cause damage to buildings and hurt people. In large earthquakes, whole districts can be devastated by the consequences of ground shaking. The ground shaking hazard map shows that almost the entire area of Ayungon is extremely vulnerable to ground shaking. Tayasan, Bindoy, Manhoyod, and Mabinay are also nearby municipalities which are also extremely prone to ground shaking. On the ground shaking map, red is the most destructive, followed by light pink, and finally purple, which is the least destructive.
This is an earthquake-induced landslide hazard map of Ayungon. If you don't know what an earthquake-induced landslide hazard map is, it displays the vulnerability of various regions to an earthquake-induced landslide. When an earthquake occurs, the transmission of seismic waves can induce ground surface shaking and vibrations. This frequently causes the collapse of potential landslide zones. This phenomenon is known as earthquake-induced landslides. In this hazard map, it shows that there are 3 levels of potential for an earthquake-induced landslide to happen: low, moderate, and high. This hazard map shows that parts of Ayungon like Mabato, Caralan, Lamigan, Tambo, Tibyawan, Tigub, Calagalag, Anibong, Poblacion, Tampoconwan, Awaan, and Iniban have none or low potential to be affected by earthquake-induced landslides. Everything else in Ayungon has mostly a moderate potential to be affected by earthquake-induced landslides. The fact that there are multiple places in Ayungon with moderate potential and some even high to be affected by earthquake-induced landslides is concerning. They might cause harm to a region as a result of complete collapse or the loss of functionality of buildings, roads, pipelines, and other lifelines.
As plate tectonics move over the years, this will impact the distribution of continents, oceans, and mountain ranges that shape different ecosystems and influence global temperature. Climate change related glacier melting and ocean thermal expansion increase the risk of earthquakes. The water table is rising due to rising sea levels in many areas, which may increase the likelihood of liquefaction during earthquakes. During an earthquake, soil begins to behave more like a liquid than a solid due to a process called liquefaction. An earthquake's shaking is what causes the ground to liquefy. The movement rearranges the sand and salt grains in damp soil underground and squeezes the water between the grains. Water is forced up to the quickest path it can find, frequently through fissures in the earth or concrete, as pressure builds up until the grains begin to flow, creating sand boils or volcanoes when silt and sand are absorbed by rising water. Sand that has been wet with water briefly loses its tenacity and changes state from solid to liquid. Rigid structures, such as buildings and bridges, may tilt or sink into liquefied material due to soil liquefaction. This liquefaction hazard map shows the areas of Ayungon town vulnerable to liquefaction. The categories are as follows: high, moderate, and low susceptibility. The basis of this hazard map shows the geology, presence of active faults, historical reports of liquefaction, geomorphology, and hydrology of the area. Based on this map, Barangay Calagcalag is low to moderate accidents to liquefaction, while barangays Poblacion, Tampokon 1 and 2, and Awaan are highly susceptible to liquefaction. Acquire this liquefaction hazard map of the municipality of Ayungon, Negros Oriental Province from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, in September 2017.
Okay, now let's move on to the tsunami hazard map. The tsunami hazard map shows the areas that are vulnerable to tsunamis. The categories on the map include high, medium, and low susceptibilities to tsunamis. As you can see on the top right corner here is the legend for tsunamis. Now, the basis of the map is the geology, presence of active faults, historical reports of tsunamis, geomorphology, and hydrology of the area. Tsunamis are, well, I know everyone knows this, but almost everyone, I don't know. Tsunamis are caused by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions or other underwater disturbances. These waves can travel at high speeds across the ocean, and when they reach land, they can cause widespread destruction. Like earthquakes, tsunamis can trigger soil liquefaction, which can cause buildings and other structures to sink. Based on the tsunami hazard map, the barangays of Poblacion, Tapocan 1 and Tapocan 2, and Awaan are highly susceptible to tsunamis, while Barangay Calag and Anibong are or has a low moderate risk of being affected by tsunamis. That is all. Thank you.
Geological hazards such as volcanoes, faults, and earthquakes and landslide, and hydrometeorological hazards such as floods, droughts, and landslide pose a threat to millions of people around Ayungon and have the power to completely destroy communities in a matter of seconds by attacking homes, ruining agricultural land, creating a shortage of food and water, harming health, and disrupting the way of life, which is why it is important to assess and identify where faults are located and read mappings cohesively. That way communities can pinpoint recommended evacuation centers and prepare precautionary action on areas that are prone to geological hazards.
Disaster risk reduction, education, and awareness is essential for everyone, especially to students and the youth. It gives all of the necessary skills and information to maintain the safety of all communities. This will be used as a tool to continue to fight catastrophes and dangerous rangers in all regions of the world, which will assist us in establishing many resilient communities in our country.
Once again, we are geologists from Negros Oriental, and this is Project Ayungon, a vision and venture of its geological features and hazards through mapping. Bye!